is don't recognize their own crown. But yet they want the world to recognize them because they light-skinned, orange-skinned black people.
So basically what you're saying, our whole political agenda has to change. And it's got to go back.
We have to honor our mothers and fathers. We have to declare our nationality. That's the first foundation before we can fix anything else. That's why the civilized world keep on dealing with it. They've been dealing with it over and over again. And we keep on ignoring it. Or keep on trying to follow some club thing. This is what our problem is. It's not that the information hasn't been delivered. It's that we won't use it.
I see.
In other words, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink if he don't want it. Why do you think people come from Africa and other nations and get the opinion in our community that we the only people that don't want nothing? But yet anybody can come from Bisnitzelsdorf or the dark side of the moon, get a 6-piece of plexiglass, come in our community and get rich in 2 years.
It almost seems as if it's a psychological problem that we have.
Right, which means we are in mental servitude. And Noble Drawley said, when he started the mission, he said, I came to redeem you all from mental slavery which you have now. Made it very clear. And he brought the information that was necessary, and he also, at the heart of the movement, he said, my job, he said, help me in my mission to bring my people back into the constitutional fold of government, enforcing our Constitution for the United States of America. And I'm going to read even right here from what Obama signed. Here's Rights of Indigenous People. Part 1, Article 5. Every indigenous individual has the right to a nationality. How come that's not taught? How come that's not taught by all these Negro leaders? They've been given this information.
Because it's dangerous and to reveal
why they not talk about nationality? Because it makes their black agendas dead issues, don't it?
It sure does.
And then it exposes that why these corporations keep giving them grants with a 501c3 to keep those Negro organizations going, doesn't it?
Sure does.
Because it's lining the pockets of these Negro leader guys. You see the point? When the international community has always spoke up on our behalf over and over again.
Yeah, this is going back to the disassociation, Taj, because the average person, when they hear the word indigenous and when they see it, they do not include themselves in it. They think that it's something separate.
I'm guilty of that.
Because they don't know themselves and they don't know their history. You see the point? And this is why it's important for even now. And so, Lena, you still on?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, and you hear a lot of these so-called black leaders, even from all these little Negro groups, talking about the King Alfred Plan. You hear them. You hear these different leaders talking about the King Alfred Plan for 10 years on radio stations, etc., all across this country, haven't you?
Yes.
Let's talk about what they conveniently overlook, just to back up again what I'm just saying to you. Now I'm going to page 374 of the King Alfred, and remember this was heavily redacted, so, a lot of the information's out, but let's show what is there. I'm going to read one page, all right? And then we're going to do some analysis. Now, I'm going to read this one single page, all right? Take notes if you will. And the listeners who are all taking notes and those who have recorders, record this. I'm going to start. This is 3-page 374. This is provided for by Executive Order 11490, October 19, 1969. This executive order was authorized October of 1969 to counteract the minority, blacks, Indians, Latinos, Puerto Ricans, and poor whites in their rise from up under the Depression and powers that be, the government, circular here, King Alfred. In the event of widespread and continuing and coordinated racial disturbances in the United States, the King Alfred, at the discretion of the President, is to be put into action immediately. This is top secret documents maintained in government structure and government institutions and amongst the military, but not for public dispensation. I'm going to read page 374 and analyze it as you will. Infiltrated organizations which are under surveillance. 1, the Black Muslims. 2, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC. 3, Congress of Racial Equality. 4, Uhuru Movement. 5, Group on Advanced Leadership, GOAL. 6, Freedom Now Party, FNP. 7, United Black Nationals of America. 8, Pan-African Movement. 9, the National Urban League. 10, the National Association of the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP. 11, Committee on Racial and Religious Progress, CORAP. Note, at the appropriate time to be designated by the President, the leaders of some of these organizations are to be detained only when it is clear that they cannot prevent the emergency. Working with local public officials during the first critical hours. All other leaders are to be detained at once. Compiled lists of minority leaders have been readied at the National Data Computer Center. It is necessary to use the minority leaders designated by the President in much the same manner in which we use minority members who are agents with central and federal, and we cannot, until there is no alternative, reveal King Alfred in all its aspects. Minority members of Congress will be unseated at once. This move is not without precedent in American history. The Attorney General of the United States. Preliminary memo, Department of Defense. Pay close attention to this paragraph. This memo is being submitted in lieu of a full report from the Joint Chiefs of Staff. That report is now in preparation. There will be many cities where the minority will be able to put into the street a superior number of people with a desperate and dangerous will. He will be a formidable enemy, for he is bound to the continent by heritage and knows that political asylum will not be available to him in other countries. The greatest concentration of the minority is in the Deep South, the Eastern Seaboard, the Great Lakes region, and the West Coast.
Okay, now, Taj, go back to where you say they were bound
They're bound to the, not the country, to the continent by heritage, which means these people who have been called indigenous are bound to this continent by heritage, by history, by birthright, by bloodline, by estate. And they've been told by their Negro leaders that they were brought from someplace else. You see where our problem is?
Oh, and this is right in our face.
Right, and the same King Alfred they be talking about, but they conveniently overlook that because they don't want to admit that our people are indigenous and aboriginal to this land. You see the problem?
I sure do.
I see it.
Now you see why they keep building jails, because they can't deport us to other countries?
That is so true, because anytime anybody else, if they're from Mexico, Jamaica, whatever have you, they're deported instantaneously, it seems like. So, and that's another thing, too, Taj. Has there ever been
Hold on, Santasha. Let me get clarification.
Okay.
Taj, your hypothesis is that they have they incarcerate on such large rates because of the fact they can't ship us anywhere else.
That's exactly right. So I'm going to read it again.
Okay.
This last paragraph. This is a preliminary from the Department of Defense, right? And that's the Joint Chiefs of Staff. That means that all the military operations of the Army, the Navy, National Guard, the Marines, all of them. That means the heads of all of them sit down and discuss how to deal with us. Now, it says this memo is being submitted in lieu of a full report from the Joint Chiefs of Staff. That report is now in preparation. There will be many cities where the minority will be able to put into the street a superior number of people with a desperate and dangerous will. He will be a formidable enemy, for he is bound to the continent by heritage and knows that political asylum will not be available to him in other countries. The greatest concentration of the minority is in the Deep South, the Eastern Seaboard, the Great Lakes region, and the West Coast. And who do you think they're talking about?
They're talking about us.
And why are they saying they're going to be a desperate will? Because they ain't going to have no job, and they've been abused, and there ain't nowhere to go. Get the point? Now you understand why they keep on building jails? Now you understand why they're targeting our women, because they've already broken up our families?
Yeah, I get it now. So the
and then these women keep on taking their children to church and destroying them and don't know they're destroying them.
Well,
Taj, they think they're delivering them to Jesus, they're really delivering them to Constantine.
So can we insinuate from the first diagnosis that you have that their next step from the incarceration is genocide?
That's what's going on. That's exactly what's going on right in our faces while we sit around trying to find something to believe in and marching and praying and keeping hope alive by virtue of the Negro leaders are being paid off to keep us smoked up in the head. You get the point?
I sure do.
Therefore, we got to get this information to our people at all costs, especially to the youth, so they can save themselves. Because ain't nobody going to save us but us.
That's
and the
true.
first thing we got to do is stop believing in institutions that have never helped us, but have only harmed us. Therefore, the truth must be told about everybody.
I see. You do have another caller. Elena, feel free to stay on the line. Hold for 1 sec, please, okay? Caller 111, welcome to Civil Alert. Please state your name and where you're calling from.
Yeah, my name is Sarge. I'm calling from Georgia.
How you feeling, good brother?
Evening, brother. How you doing?
Good evening to you. I'm glad to be able to participate in your show, but boy, do I have a lot of questions and comments here. First of all, I have my copy of the United States Constitution right in my hand. In fact, I have 4 of them. I have 4 copies of different and 3 different books with copies of the Constitution in them. And I would like to know what is this 13th Amendment with 20 sections to whom you refer in your program description, because I'm looking at it, it has 2. Section 1.
I know, exactly.
Okay,
exactly.
And I also have a question. This deportation, this executive order to which you refer, I missed the number of it. I would like it to look into it to see if it's still in effect. However, I'm aware that a government can commit any number of tyrannical actions. After all, the Japanese were interned during World War II. That doesn't make it constitutional just because they do it. I am a natural-born citizen of the United States. I'm not a 14th Amendment citizen. I'm a natural-born citizen. I was made a natural-born citizen under the definition of the law of nations, which the framers adopted for the definition of natural-born citizen from Eric David Tell's treatise in 1769, the Law of Nations, from which they derived most of the meanings in the Constitution. And therefore, to support me, there's nothing in naturalization law, immigration law, constitutional law, which would allow me to be deported at any time, even if they did it. I mean, they might do something that would be tyrannical, but it would be unconstitutional and illegal. I am a natural-born citizen.
Yes.
Whether they like it or not.
Yes.
So I'm trying to understand how it is that this executive order is going to trump the Constitution to the extent that there could even possibly be any conception of a large-scale
absolutely. Now,
of course, they're going to choose to disregard the Constitution altogether. And that's what tyrants do anyway.
Yes. Now, which question you want to answer first?
All right. So, is this executive order that you cite? Could you please give me the number? Because I
That's
intend to.
executive order. All right, write this down so you can do some research.
All right, hold
executive
on.
order.
My pen, stop writing. Let me get another pen, please. Okay, what is it?
Executive order.
Yeah.
11490, King Alfred.
King Alfred.
Yes, and for further research, addendums have been made progressively over the period, which is also the Rex 84 plan.
Okay.
All right. Now, concerning the original article of Amendment 13, you'll find that in the congressional records.
Okay, you're saying there were additions to the 13th Amendment that weren't ratified by force of the state?
No. Listen. The original article of Amendment 13, its original 20 sections, which you will not have in the school books today, will be found in the United States congressional records.
Oh, okay. Well, you do understand the only thing that matters is what was ratified by 3/4 of the states. At the
Yes, this was
and the House passed them to the states.
Yes.
So no matter what they were if they weren't ratified by 3/4 of the states.
Yes. And it's not exposed to the public.
I mean,
now, I'm giving you some information if you listen.
But there are often amendments that are originally proposed but are dropped in the ratification process, so they don't matter.
Now, what you'll find that this information was covered up with the 14th and 15th Amendment, which was not properly ratified, which is absolutely in accord with what you're saying.
Well, the 14th wasn't properly ratified, but the 13th was.
Exactly.
Well, the 14th is separate from the 13th, though. You said 20 sections.
It's done. Yes, it's done to cover that up, and the creation of the 14th Amendment artificial person, the corporate person, which is known as the man of straw.
Well, look, the improper ratification of the 14th Amendment is well known historically. I mean, essentially, the southern states were deprived
we're establishing it for the record. Establishing it for the record.
Yeah, the Union put the states that were deprived of this suffrage at the point of a bayonet and told them, you will ratify the 14th Amendment or we will reinstitute martial law throughout the southern states that refuse to ratify it. I understand that. But nonetheless, that is a separate point of contention. The 14th Amendment constitutionally is problematic. However, part of the ratification process was to remove it from the purview of the Supreme Court, which Congress has the authority to do. They can remove it.
You're absolutely right.
And that's what they did.
Yes.
So I would think the entire issue of the 14th Amendment would have to be revisited by the amendatory process. And there's no political will. There's no political will to do that. That's just a non-starter.
You've got that exactly right. Now, you've got that right. There's no political will. Now, let's establish the facts on the record why there's no political will. Not only why there's no political will, not only that they're not going to do it, they can't do it. Let's talk why not.
Well, the Supreme Court can't look at it. Congress can't. We can revisit it through the amendatory process.
Now, let's talk why they can't do it. Now, what occurred in 1933 with Roosevelt, etc., and we're not just talking about the war powers, we're talking about the introduction of the U.S. democracy. What occurred then?
What year,
and why this stuff will not be revisited?
Well, what year are you speaking of?
1933.
Okay, 1933.
When they did the fake holiday thing. When they did the fake bank holiday thing.
Oh, the bank holiday?
Yes, what they call the bank holiday. What is it that occurred that makes the Congress, etc., and those other so-called institutions of government, what makes them moot and having and making reference to what you just said, issue relative to them so-called revisiting the 14th Amendment or anything else concerning the operations here in any legitimate fashion.
I didn't know that the Congress had been mooted from doing that. That would seem to me a violation of separation of powers, but I'll let you refresh my memory.
It is because they transferred all of the departments of government, all of the offices of their government, and the Treasury Department to the International Monetary Fund under the auspices of the Jesuits of Rome, and that the United States federal government is operating today in name only.
Okay.
They're all a fraud.
I've heard of that before, but
you can check that in the congressional records too. You can check that in the congressional records too. Also, what you need to check in the congressional records is the meeting of these same senators and congressmen also in 1916, and it's in the congressional records. And you'll find that in American Diplomatic Code 1778, 1884, Volume 2, Elliott, page 179, and that's their secret Treaty of Verona, and that's what they've been operating against our people that our people have been calling racism.
Well, wait a minute, sir. So you're telling me then that significant elements of American sovereignty have been transferred to foreign entities I'm telling you that exactly. Well, wait a minute. Okay, if it has, then it is a clear violation of the Constitution because it says that all treaties that are ratified must be done in furtherance of the Constitution. You're telling me extra Constitution. Wait a minute. Let me ask you this question. You're telling me there's been a
No, wait a minute. No, I'm not telling you. I'm informing you of their record.
Telling me that there's been a transference of significant elements of national sovereignty in violation of the Constitution, and they put it on the congressional record for all of us to see.
It's on the congressional records, but they know that our people don't read. We just march and pray. They ain't worried about us.
Wait a minute. I think a lot of white people would be looking at that, too, if that was the case.
No, they're not white people. They're Europeans.
All of those white people would be silent about it. Because I know a lot of them, and like myself, they are ardent constitutionalists, and if they truly believe that to be the case, they wouldn't tolerate it for 1 second.
They do know that, and they do not. And if they're ardent constitutionalists, they would know that what I just spoke is true, and they would be teaching it, just like we are right now.
Okay, they put it on the congressional record for us all to see that our Constitution.
I'm telling you, I just told you where to find it.
Mitigated to foreign powers, and we want you to know about it.
I'm going to repeat it. I just told you.
Okay, all right. I'm going to look that up.
As a matter of fact, if you want me to get the record, I'll read some of it to you.
I am going to research it. Yes, sir. I definitely am.
All right, now.
All right, but even if it's
take a few notes. I'm going to read some from it right now, so you can take a few notes. United States Congressional Records, United States of America, Representative James Tropicant, Jr. of Ohio, addressing the House of Representatives, etc. Mr. Speaker, we are here now in Chapter 11, and members of Congress are official trustees presiding over the greatest reorganization of any bankrupt entity in world history, the U.S. government. We are setting forth, hopefully, a blueprint for our future. There are some who say it is a coroner's report that will lead to our demise. It is an established fact that the United States federal government has been dissolved by the Emergency Banking Act of March the 9th, 1933, 48 Statute, 1 Public Law, 89-719, and declared by President Roosevelt being bankrupt and insolvent, HJR 192, 73rd Congress, in session, June the 5th, 1933, joint resolution to suspend the gold standard and abrogate the gold clause, dissolved the sovereign authority of the United States and the official capacities of all United States governmental offices, officers, and departments, and is further evidence that the United States federal government exists today in name only. The receivers of the United States bankruptcy are the international bankers via United Nations, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund, and all United States offices, officials, and departments are now operating within a de facto status in name only under emergency war powers. With the constitutional Republican form of government now dissolved, the receivers of the bankruptcy have adopted a new form of government for the United States. And this new form of government is known as a democracy, being an established socialist communist order under a new governor for America. And this act was instituted and established by transferring and or placing the office of the Secretary of the Treasury to that of the Governor of the International Monetary Fund, Public Law 94-564, page 8, section HR 13955 reads in part, the United States Secretary of Treasury receives no compensation for representing the United States. Gold and silver was such a powerful money during the founding of the United States of America that the founding fathers declared that only gold or silver coins can be money in America. And since gold and silver coinage were heavy and inconvenient for a lot of transactions, they were stored in banks, and a plain check was used as a money substitute. People traded their coupons as money or currency. Currency is not money, but a money substitute. Redeemable currency must promise to pay a dollar equivalent in gold or silver money. Federal Reserve notes make no such promises and are not money, quote unquote. A Federal Reserve note is a debt obligation of the federal United States government and is not money. The federal United States government and the U.S. Congress were not and have never been authorized by the Constitution for the United States of America to issue currency of any kind, but only lawful money, gold and silver coins. It is essential that we comprehend the distinction between real money and paper money substitutes. One cannot get rich by accumulating money substitutes. One can only get deeper in debt. And we, the people, are no longer have any money, and most Americans have never been paid any money for a very long time, perhaps not in their entire life. Now do you comprehend why you feel broke? Now do you understand why you are bankrupt, along with the rest of the country? Federal Reserve notes are unsigned checks written on a closed account. Federal Reserve notes are an inflatable paper system designed to create debt through inflation and devaluation of currency. And whenever there is an increase in the supply of a money substitute in the economy without a corresponding increase in the gold and silver backing, inflation occurs. Inflation is an invisible form of taxation that irresponsible governments inflict on their citizens. The Federal Reserve Bank, who controls the supply of money and movement, has everybody fooled. They have access to an unlimited supply of Federal Reserve notes, paying only for the printing cost of what they need. Federal Reserve notes are nothing more than promissory notes for U.S. Treasury securities, T-bills, and a promise to pay the debt to the Federal Reserve Bank. And there is a fundamental difference between paying and discharging a debt, quote unquote. To pay a debt, you must pay with the value of substance, i.e. gold, silver, barter, or commodity. With Federal Reserve notes, you can only discharge a debt. You cannot pay a debt with a debt currency system. You cannot service a debt with a currency that has no backing in value or substance. And no contract in common law is valid unless it involves an exchange of good and valuable consideration. Unpayable debt transfers power and control of the sovereign power structure that has no interest in money, law, equity, or justice because they have so much wealth already. And that's by virtue of those Federal Reserve notes. And their lust for power and control, and since the inception of central banking, they have controlled the fates of nations. And the Federal Reserve System is based on the canon law and the principles of sovereignty protected in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. In fact, the international bankers and a common law trust, quote unquote, use the common law trust, quote unquote, as their model, adding stock and naming it a joint stock trust, quote unquote. And the U.S. Congress has passed a law making it illegal for any legal person, quote unquote, to duplicate a quote unquote joint stock trust in 1873. And the Federal Reserve Act was legislated post facto to 1870, although post facto laws are strictly prohibited by the Constitution. See Section 19.3. The Federal Reserve System is a sovereign power structure separate and distinct from the federal United States government. The Federal Reserve is a maritime lender and or maritime insurance underwriter to the federal United States, operating exclusively under Admiralty maritime law, and the lender or underwriter bears the risk, and the maritime law compelling specific performance in paying the interest or premiums are the same. Assets of the debtor can also be hypothecated to pledge something as a security without taking possession of it as security by the lender or underwriter. And the several Federal Reserve Acts stipulated that the interest on the debt was to be paid in gold, and there was no stipulation in the Federal Reserve Act for ever paying the principal. And prior to 1913, most Americans owned clear, allodial title to property, free and clear of any liens or mortgages until the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 hypothecated all property within the federal United States to the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve, in which the trustees, stockholders, held legal title. And the U.S. citizen tenant franchisee was registered as a beneficiary of the trust via his or her birth certificate. And in 1933, the federal United States hypothecated all of the present and future properties, assets, and labor of their subjects. The 14th Amendment U.S. citizen to the Federal Reserve System. In return, the Federal Reserve System agreed to extend the Federal United States Corporation all the credit money substitute it needed. Like any other debtor, the Federal United States government had to assign a collateral and security to their creditors as a condition of the loan. And since the Federal United States didn't have any assets, they assigned the private property of their economic slaves, the U.S. citizens, as collateral against the unpayable federal debt. And they also pledged the unincorporated federal territories, national parks, forests, birth certificates, and non-profit organizations as collateral against the federal debt. All has already been transferred as payment to the international bankers. And unwittingly, America has returned to its pre-American Revolution feudal roots, whereby the land is held by a sovereign and the common people had no rights to hold allodial title to property. Once again, we the people are tenants and sharecroppers, renting our own property from the sovereign in the guise of the Federal Reserve Bank, and we the people have exchanged one master for another. And this has been going on for over 80 years now without informed knowledge of the American people and without a voice protesting loud enough. Now it is easy to grasp why America is so fundamentally bankrupt, and why don't more people own their properties outright, and why are 90% of Americans mortgaged to the hilt and have little or no assets after all debts and liabilities have been paid? Why does it feel like you are working harder and harder and getting less and less? And we are reaping what we have sown. And the result of our harvest is a painful bankruptcy and the foreclosure of American property, precious liberties, and the way of life. And few of our elected representatives in Washington, D.C. have dared to tell the truth. The federal United States is bankrupt, and our children will inherit this unpayable debt and the tyranny to enforcing the paying of it. And America has become completely bankrupt in world leadership, financial credit, and its reputation for courage, vision, and human rights. And this is an undeclared economic war. bankruptcy, and economic slavery of the most corrupt order. Break up America and take back your country. And that's James Trafalgar, except on the floor of the House of Representatives, and is documented. And as a matter of fact, it was so devastating, and people have been writing in, that they went in and altered the record even. They took this first entry part out of the record. And that's documented, and I got the documents for that too. And then it makes reference back to even the extract of the 1916 congressional records, and this is Senator Owen in 1916. I wish to put into the record the secret Treaty of Verona of November the 22nd, 1822, showing what this ancient conflict is between the rule of the few and the rule of the many. And I wish to call the attention to the Senate of this treaty, because it is the threat of this treaty which was the basis of the Monroe Doctrine. And it throws a powerful white light upon the conflict between the monarchical government and the government by the people. And the Holy Alliance, under the influence of Metternich, the Premier of Austria, in 1822, issued this remarkable secret document. And this is on American Diplomatic Codes of 1884, Volume 2, Elliott, page 779, Congressional Records, the Secret Treaty of Verona. And the undersigned, specially authorized to make some additions to the Treaty of the Holy Alliance, after having exchanged their respective credentials, have agreed as follows. Article 1, the high contracting powers being convinced that the system of representative government is equally as incompatible with the monarchical principles as the maxims of the sovereignty of the people with divine rights engage mutually in the maxim of in the most solemn manner, to use all that their efforts to put an end to the system of representative governments in whatever country it may exist in Europe, and to prevent its being introduced in those countries where it is not yet known. Article 2, as it can not be doubted that the liberty of the press is the most powerful means used by the pretended supporters of the rights of nations to determine to the detriment, of those princes of the high contracting parties, promise reciprocally to adopt all proper measures to suppress it, not only in their own states but also in the rest of Europe. Article 3, convinced that the principles of religion contribute most powerfully to keep nations in the state of passive obedience, which they owe to their princes, the high contracting parties declare it to be their intention to sustain in their representative states those measures which the clergy may adopt with the aim of ameliorating their own interests, intimately connected with the preservation of the authority of the princes, and the contracting powers join in offering their thanks to the Pope for what he has already done for them, and solicit his constant cooperation in their views of submitting the nations. And that's just Article 3, and it has 7 articles to the Treaty of Verona. And that's the fundamental operations that are going on right now. And this is the reason why the corporations run North America, and the Congress puts up on fronts having people arguing between the Democrats and the Republicans, and neither one of them are legitimate government. They're imposters, and they're operative deputy knights, Knights of Malta, Knights of Columbus, Ku Klux Klan operatives for the Popes of Rome under the Christian Black Codes, etc., and the secret Treaty of Verona, and the people are sitting around arguing about a Congress that ain't even legitimate.
Living in this world of sin. You're living in this world of sin. We're living in this world of sin. We all living in this world of sin. Living in this world of sin. You're living in this world of sin. Yeah. I'm living in this world of sin. We all living in this world of sin. Living in the air that curses our father, and dissing minds on things siding with the elders. This generation see it fit in its own eyes. Nothing but the sign of the times of genocide. Yet not lost any sins of filthiness, living through the rules of poverty, seeking riches, deceitful myths on the verge diminishes. A brother that repent cause he knows he replenished. We got things that are like knives, hit our mouth like swords, and lofty all eyes, y'all. wide-eyed, quick to divide the poor from the earth and separate the needy from the men's purse. Three things in life that are never satisfied, like living for DRI and getting high as we get by. One will be the grave, two the bare womb, three will be the waters of the earth we consume. Living in this world of sin, you're living in this world of sin.